Hey there, and welcome to my channel where I discuss all the tips and tricks necessary for you to live a life of adventure. You know, today's video is going to be all about, is it safe to actually hike alone? I don't know about you guys, but I have a lot of friends and family that are frequently asking me like how I'm able to hike alone. Less so now, but especially when I was first getting started, when I first told everyone that I was going off to hike the Colorado Trail, they're all kind of like, really? Like, are you going with anyone? And the crazy thing is, even when you meet people on trail, oftentimes I'll be talking to someone and they'll be like, oh wow, you know, you're so brave to be hiking alone. Not just that, but it really kind of breaks my heart to see people talk in like Facebook groups and stuff. Love to hike more, but they don't have anybody to go with and they're too afraid to go alone. And I think it's really sad because honestly, if you look at the statistics and stuff, which I'm going to go through in more detail, really, it's not that dangerous to actually hike alone. And I think a lot of it is just like sensationalization by the media, as well as just people's like internal fears and more overcoming that than actually dealing with problems in the wild. So I'm going to go through that, but if you guys don't mind, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel, especially if you're someone that is new to hiking or backpacking. I go through lots of tips and tricks on this channel. I make videos twice a week. I also kind of focus on dogs, so if you're someone that hikes with your dog, I post a lot about that as well. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So first of all, why might someone want to hike alone? There's a lot of different reasons, and it's just going to kind of depend on the person. For me, I hike alone primarily as a source of convenience. You know, I first started hiking back when I was in college, and I had friends that enjoyed doing stuff outside, but making your schedules line up, especially when people have different classes or kind of doing the same things, can be difficult. And honestly, I'm kind of an introvert, so I didn't really have that many friends to begin with. So it was just easier for me to go out alone. And especially as I've gotten older, you know, I've moved like once every 6 months, once every year. I've moved states and cities multiple times over the last couple years. So finding other people to go hike with can be a little bit of a challenge sometimes. And above and beyond that, hiking with dogs, it can be sometimes challenging to find people that like dogs are compatible with, especially because my one dog is kind of jerk. All right, Prima. But even without dogs, like it can be really hard if you're a new hiker to find someone that doesn't make you feel like you're really slow or you're working really hard to catch up with them. If you're a more experienced hiker or someone that just likes to go fast, sometimes it's hard because you feel like you're slowing down. So finding someone that you match with, not just like speed, but also just like compatibility in your other hiking styles. Do you like to take pictures and stop all the time? Are you someone that likes to just like book it until you get to the top of the mountain and then take a break? It can be kind of hard sometimes. So that's not to say like I don't like hiking with other people. I do. It's just a lot of times, you know, it's kind of more of a special thing and it's actually easier for me to go alone the majority of the time. Above and beyond that, I will say too, another benefit to hiking alone is it's really pushed me to face some of my fears and push my boundaries and my comfort level. It's caused me to become much more independent as a person, for sure. And like I remember when I first started hiking, was up by Fort Collins, Colorado in the Raywall Wilderness, and I remember how wigged out I used to get by just how quiet the forest is up there. It was before the fire went through this summer, and at first I was so nervous that I used to play music because I'd be hiking alone with mostly Skittles at the time. This was before Prima started hiking with me. And it just made me feel a lot better, especially after I had a moose encounter, which I'm going to talk about wildlife in this video too, but you know, it pushed me a lot. Now I go hiking all the time and don't even think about it the majority of the time. And it's really freeing, and it's changed my life. Like if I hadn't pushed myself to hike alone when I first got started, then there's no way that I would be doing the things I'm doing now, living the lifestyle I'm living now, because it just honestly, starting hiking then completely changed like the path of my life. So, and, you know, maybe that won't happen for everyone or won't be the case, but for me, it was life-changing, and I'm so glad that it's something that I do and something that I enjoy. And I hope that hopefully this video will help you, especially if you're a little nervous about hiking on your own, to feel more comfortable, or maybe you can show it to a family member that is nervous for you and you can show them to help them feel a little bit better about you going out and going on lots of really epic adventures. So I do also want to mention before I get too much farther that this is with the focus or the assumption that you're hiking in the US or Canada. Obviously, if you are going to go like try to bag peaks in Pakistan or something, like I'm not speaking to the safety of that. This is all assuming that you were in the US or Canada, or maybe other similar countries as far as like wildlife and people and those kinds of statistics. So do keep that in mind before going and showing this to everyone. All right, so the first thing that I think most people are nervous about as far as hiking alone is the fear that they will become the victim of a violent crime. And what I mean by that is they fear that they're going to become assaulted by someone or they're going to be murdered while hiking alone. All right, so I think that is valid to be concerned about this, especially if you were hiking on a trail that's in a very urban area. Personally, I have felt the most nervous when traveling alone or camping alone when I was in the town of Redding, California, and camping just outside on Lake Shasta because it was very easy to access and because there's a high homeless population. However, when you get much further in the backcountry, you have to remember that that's a lot of work for someone that's like a psychopath to go out of their way to try to murder you. And really, it's not that common. According to the ATC, so the group that manages Appalachian Trail, there have only been 11 reported murders on the Appalachian Trail since 1974, I believe. So that's really not that many. I'm sure there are plenty more murders in whatever city you live in, depending on where you live. Like, I live in a small rural town here in Alaska, so maybe not. But if you live in like LA or New York or even Denver, there's probably more murders in your city, probably in half a year to a year, than there are, you know, in what is that, like 45 years on just Appalachian Trail, which runs through multiple states and is highly used, much more used than even like the Pacific Crest Trail or the Continental Divide Trail. So does it happen? Yeah, but I think a lot of it is just whenever it does happen, everyone goes, whoa, like someone got murdered, I'm never going to go out there again. It's all over the media, and they make it sound like it happens all the time, and it just doesn't. So keep that in mind. You know, be aware of your surroundings. When I'm backpacking, I try to avoid camping too close to a trailhead, especially if it's a busy trailhead. But even then, I wouldn't be super concerned about it. The farther in the backcountry we go, the less likely it is. So, does it happen? Yes, but not that often. So the next topic I want to discuss is wildlife. I think that's the other main thing that most people are concerned about when it comes to going out and hiking alone or their families and friends. So by wildlife, I'm mostly discussing carnivores, so bears, cougars, and grizzlies. Honestly, like moose to me is the most dangerous animal out here as far as like we were most likely to have a problem with. And of course, like you should not go hug a deer either because they might like beat the living daylights out of you. But yes, I'm mostly talking about carnivores is what most people think about. So as far as bears, I have another video all about hiking in grizzly country, and in that video I discussed how there have only been 10 people killed by bears in the state of Alaska between 2000 and 2017. So within a 17-year span, 10 people were killed by bears, and 7 of those were grizzlies. I want to say that most of those were actually people that were out working, so not necessarily hiking, and I mentioned that in that video. And not all of those people were alone, so keep that in mind. Just because they were hiking and were attacked by a bear and killed does not mean that they were a solo hiker. I also mentioned in that video that 88 people in the year of 2017 alone were killed in fatal car crashes in Alaska. So that is 8 times, almost 9 times the number of people died in 1 year because of car accidents compared to a 17-year span by bear attacks. Now, I don't have the numbers for Canada or the rest of the US, but most people are more worried about grizzlies than they are about black bears. And like it happens, but it doesn't happen all that often. And just here in Alaska, walking out your front door, it could happen, let alone hiking. So, you know, like, you should be bear aware and do the things I talk about in my grizzly video, but you shouldn't let that stop you from getting out necessarily. Same with cougars. Cougars have, like, the numbers sound kind of scary at first, but you have to remember this is a 100-year period where there were 125 cougar-related attacks and there were 27 fatalities. So in 100 years, in the whole United States, 27 people have been killed by a cougar. That's not that many. More people die, like, of the flu every year than from cougars. You're more likely to just get hit probably walking on the sidewalk than get mauled by a cougar. So like, yeah, it's sad for those people, but again, it's not that many, and a lot of it's just being smart. I also want to say that that's total. A lot of those attacks I would warrant were probably mountain bikers or trail runners. When you see news reports of people being attacked by cougars, it tends to be those two groups, and it's just because if you think about like how a cougar thinks and how they act, they're a predator. So when they see something go whirring by, they're more likely to attack a moving object that's moving very fast than something that's just plodding along with a large backpack on. So as a hiker, it's less likely, especially if you're not hiking. I mean, honestly, they probably see you much more than you see them. So again, can it happen? Yes. Is it likely? Not really. And the last one, I do want to mention wolves. It's not really a big issue for most people where you live, kind of like grizzlies, but there have only been 2 fatal predatory attacks by wild wolves in the last like 50 years, 75 years, something like that. Most of the actual deaths caused by wolves have been in captivity by usually like hybrid, like wolf dog mixes. So it's again, it's not that likely. I think one or both of them were people that were just like in their village in Alaska. It was not even like they were hikers. So yeah, I mean, you need to be careful, but again, all of these are not even just numbers from just hikers, and a lot of these aren't necessarily people that were alone. You have to think about, like, if you run into an animal, having an extra person with you, if a bear really decides it wants to eat you, or a cougar, is it going to make that big of a difference? You got to think about that. Is it nervous? Yes. Like, there's still times, like, I've been backpacking alone on these long distance trails for 3 summers now, and hiking alone for longer than that. And there's still times sometimes where I'm laying in my tent and I just hear weird noises and it just kind of like creeps me out. Or like this summer when I was hiking in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, there was just this one stretch of trail where it was very quiet and it just kind of like creeped me out, to be honest. I like kind of took a break and kept going. I didn't want to camp there because it was just kind of like, this just feels weird. And that's okay. Like, it happens to all of us, but you just can't let it stop you. So in my opinion, the actual bigger thing that I would be nervous about than these are like the elements. And I'm going to also kind of lump cows in there. It was funny. I was talking to my friend Quill on the phone about cows last night. And like, yeah, they're almost scarier to some people if you run into like a bull than some of these other animals. I haven't had any problems with cows, but it just kind of depends on where you are, I guess. But by elements, I mean like lightning, wind on ridges, crossing big, like really fast flowing stream, cold weather caused by hypothermia, running out of water, heat stroke. Those are all much bigger problems that I've had and have made me much more nervous, whether I was with a group or alone when I've been out on the trail, rather than wildlife or people. And it's just like when you're out there, especially when you're really far out there, like you're much more likely to see those kinds of things, and they can put a much bigger dent in your plan. And the reason why I say this as a solo hiker is because when you're alone, that means you have to make all those decisions on your own without somebody else to kind of make sure that you're not making a rash decision, for first of all, and 2, that the elements are not causing you to make a bad decision. Because like altitude, being really cold if you're hypothermic, can cause you to make poor decisions and kind of cloud your judgment. And so if you're alone, you don't have somebody else to kind of help make sure that you're not going to wander off or be confused or that kind of thing. So to me, that's almost the bigger danger. But again, how many people do you know that have been struck by lightning while hiking in the mountains? I mean, I don't know anybody, and I've lived my whole life up until recently in Colorado, where there's lots of lightning in the summer. So you gotta weigh that and just be careful, right? So with that said, there's a couple things you can do to kind of be safer, and then I'm also going to talk about how you can build your confidence while hiking solo if you're just getting started. Some of the things that have helped me over time. But as far as like what you can do to stay safe, the first thing is something that I recommend to everyone, no matter if you're hiking alone or with a group, and that's to let someone know where you're going. And I'll be perfectly honest, I'm not as good about this as I should be, and it's something that I'm constantly working on. But it's if you have a roommate, it's telling them where you're going, or if you don't live with anybody or don't have close friends in the area, like send a text to your family saying, hey, I'm going to go hike at this trail. I will text you by 5 tonight that I'm out. And if you don't hear from me by tomorrow? Will you send search and rescue? You know, having that expectation, or having like a buddy, like an accountability buddy kind of thing going on, where they know to call for help if they don't hear from you. That way, if something serious happens to you, someone knows where to come find you and where to look for you. So like a secondary thing that can go with that is to use a personal locator beacon. So this last year, I finally was able to invest in a Garmin InReach Mini, which I have been very happy with. This has a lot of different functions. The main thing is that they have an SOS button. So if you get into a pickle and you really need some help, like you twist an ankle and you can't get out, you're attacked by an animal, you can just flip open the cover, press the button, and then the authorities will send someone to come help you. The nice thing is most PLBs these days also have texting capabilities. So they use satellites to send text messages, which means that if you are injured, and you have one that can text, you can actually tell the authorities what's wrong so they know what kind of help to send. The other pro is if you were running behind and you told your family you text by 5 and you don't think you're going to make it out in time because you took a nap on the trail, you can usually send them a message saying, hey, I'm doing just fine, but I'm running late. I would not rely solely on this, especially as a solo hiker, because, you know, if you fall and hit your head, it's kind of hard for you to press the SOS button if you're passed out. So it's kind of like a nice secondary, and I really like it a lot, but it shouldn't replace common sense and letting someone know where you're going. The third thing with that is to just be prepared. So be knowledgeable, keep working on your skills, which you're already doing if you're watching this video. So good for you, keep it up. You know, the more you know, carrying the 10 essentials, knowing what to do if you have an animal encounter will go a very long ways into helping you feel more prepared and helping you stay safe. And again, if you haven't watched my video on hiking with grizzlies, be sure to check that out if you live in grizzly country. So how can you build your confidence? You've done all these things, you know statistically it's not likely, you are carrying all these things and telling people where you're going to stay safe, but you still just feel really creeped out or really nervous when you're going out on your own. The first thing I would say would be to start slow and easy and in an area where you're familiar. So what I mostly did when I first started getting hiking, I say that all the time, when I first started hiking alone was to start on like close trails that were close to town, that had more traffic, so other people were hiking on them. So even though I was alone, it didn't really feel like I was alone. I was seeing other people, other groups of people, you know, not like just the one random group that'd make me feel creeped out, but like constant traffic. So this is pretty easy if you live in a place like Denver or, you know, places of California, that kind of thing, on the Appalachian Trail, where you're constantly seeing other people, kind of form that camaraderie. And, you know, if something happens to you, someone's going to be able to help you out. Like same with like a lot of the 14ers. Like one of my first big hikes was Gray's and Torrey's Peak in Colorado. And it was nice because there was a constant stream of people, which now is maybe not my favorite, but at the time was great because I knew if I twisted my ankle, there was going to be like 50 other people that could either call for help or maybe help me down the mountain. So that's a really good place to start. The next thing I would say would be to stick to daylight hours. So night hiking can be a little freaky at first. It's a lot of fun once you get used to it, but you know, I would start out during the daytime. I would not necessarily go for sunrise or sunset hikes where you're going to be ending up in the dark at some point, just because you hear lots more noises you know, and kind of is weird at first. And same, I guess, with that too, is maybe start out hiking, like day hiking alone first, and then build up to backpacking. That's definitely what I did. That way you're not like laying in your tent at night being weirded out. And, you know, once again, it's starting slow, slower miles, easier trails, that kind of thing. So I typically don't recommend blaring music because it's just not very polite to other people. But occasionally, if I am feeling kind of like wigged out because there's literally no one else out there and it's like really, really quiet, what I have done a couple times is to just play music aloud on my phone. You can also sing, like singing to yourself is really honestly a great way. I do that a lot, especially when I'm backpacking alone. So I'll sing songs from Frozen and that kind of thing. And it's just kind of like, it lets other animals know you're there and it just like brings up your mood and helps you feel better. You stop hearing like little weird noises when you're hiking. So that's another really good tip to work on your confidence. So I would say too, for me, I also tend to get wigged out more in the forest than I do in areas that are more open. And of course, it's gonna be hard depending on where you live. Like if you live on the East Coast, obviously there's a lot of forest there and this might not be possible. But if you live somewhere where you have like an option, I would maybe choose places that are more open, like the desert, or start hiking above tree line if you can park at a high parking lot, that kind of thing. I've never felt as weirded out or wigged out as I have when I've been hiking in a very quiet forest. That tends to be when I get the most weirded out, but I don't know, maybe it's different for you. I'd love to hear if it's different, or there's something else that like weirds you out. Definitely let me know. It's interesting to hear how it affects different people. So the last thing would be to carry some sort of deterrent. I personally don't carry a firearm. I don't think it's necessary for, you know, just like I said, statistically, it's not very likely to actually run into something. So I don't really think you need to, and honestly, I don't know how to use a firearm, and I don't want to deal with all the legal implications on where it's legal and where it's not, especially for backpacking. But maybe for you, if you already have one and are comfortable with it, that could be something you would do as well. Especially maybe if you have PTSD because you've had a negative encounter or experience, that's something you could do. You could also carry pepper spray or, you know, good old bear spray, especially if you're hiking grizzly country. You should do this anyways. But I will say that my parents, when I sent my dogs home on the Colorado Trail, they forced me to take bear spray on the whole entire trail, and it was probably a waste of weight, but it made my family feel better, so that's an option too. So that's all the tips I have for hiking alone. I hope this video has been helpful and will maybe give you some confidence, or give your family confidence if you're going out and hiking alone. Again, you know, question of the day, I would love to hear if you hike alone or if you hike with a group, or if you're someone that's looking to hike alone. And of course, tell me like what area too. I mean, don't be super specific, but like what area of the country are you hiking alone? I'd love to hear about it. You know, of course, like if you leave your Instagram too, I'll definitely check out and maybe give you a follow too. So that's, you know, for today, that's great. If you want to subscribe, like, that's all good. That helps me and that helps you see more videos like this in your YouTube feed. And otherwise, I hope you have a great week, and hopefully we'll see you out in the trails.